Hello, brothers and sisters. This is Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life, bringing you another episode in our series of election videos to prepare our brothers and sisters, our fellow citizens of the United States, to vote in this year's elections. I want to reflect with you today on some words of St. John Paul II and of the United States Catholic bishops, talking about the interrelationship between the different issues. As we all know, there are many issues to be considered in many elections, and these issues are all important. Issues that relate to human dignity, the protection of human life, our improvement of life in this world. After all, those who are running for public office and who hold public office are responsible for the protection of our rights and for improving, according to their particular job description of their office, our life in this world. But there are so many issues, and it can be confusing for voters to figure out which one should carry more weight as they make their decision to vote. Well, John Paul II and the U.S. bishops have both given us important guidance on this matter. I want to go back to a statement that John Paul II made in 1988 in a document called Christi Fidelis Laici. It's the document about the vocation and mission of the lay faithful in the church and in the world. That, of course, includes in the realm of politics. Here's what he said about the relationship between different kinds of issues. He wrote, above all, the common outcry, which is justly made on behalf of human rights. For example, the right to health, to home, to work, to family, to culture, is false and illusory if the right to life, the most basic and fundamental right, and the condition of all other personal rights, is not defended with maximum determination. This is strong language. I was talking about this with Cardinal Renato Martino one day at the Vatican. He headed up the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, and he oversaw the creation of the document, it's actually a book, called the Compendium of the Social Doctrine of the Church. Obviously a key expert and leader about what the church teaches on social issues. And he was commenting on this passage, and he said, John Paul is saying that, without the defense of the fundamental right to life, no other discussion of human rights can continue. In other words, he says that the conversation has to stop right there. Because if you're not defending the right to life, first of all, you can't have or enjoy any other rights, which is what John Paul means when he says here, it's the most basic and fundamental right and the condition of all other personal rights. In other words, if a candidate or a party is talking to you about their health care plan, that can only benefit people who are alive. If they're talking with you about an education policy, well, the children have to be born first in order to enjoy their right to education. And for this, so on it goes for work and family and culture and any other kind of right or good you want to offer them. It all depends on life. That's the first point. But I want to focus in on these words he uses when he says false and illusory. In other words, he's saying he uses the word outcry, to call for human rights, right to health and to work and to family, while at the same time being pro-choice on abortion and not recognizing that the children in the womb have a right to life which cannot be infringed and must be protected by the government. He says if that's the position they take on abortion, let it be legal, Roe v. Wade is okay, babies in the womb can be killed at the choice of the mother. If that's what the candidate is saying, well then his or her advocacy of the right for health care and work and family and any other rights, John Paul says is false and illusory. Why? Why is it false and illusory? It's an illusion, he says. Because we're talking here about human rights. A right that you and I may have is a human right if it comes along with our humanity. In other words, the only criterion you need to meet in order to have that right and to have it protected is that you're human. Now, you being human is not something that anybody else can give you or take away from you. This is what our Declaration of Independence means when it talks about inalienable rights. A right is inalienable, meaning that no one can take it from you, no one can alienate it from you, and you can't even alienate it from yourself. You can't throw it away. You can't divest yourself of your own human rights, no more than you can divest yourself of your own humanity and turn into a different species. So our human rights begin when our humanity begins, and they last as long as our humanity lasts. That's a human right. And the problem here with advocating for other human rights while denying the right to life is that by denying the right to life, as happens with abortion policy, saying that the child in the womb can be killed, what you're doing then is you're divorcing that right to life from that humanity. And therefore you're divorcing all human rights from that foundation in humanity. In other words, you're saying that the right applies to some human beings, but not to all. And if you take away that person's right to life, you've taken away their education, their health care, their right to immigrate, their right to be protected from terrorism, their right to food and clothing and shelter. You've taken all those rights away when you've denied their human right to life, and therefore you cannot possibly believe that those other rights are rooted in their humanity. Because if those other rights are rooted in their humanity, and in fact, if any human right is rooted in their humanity, then you cannot go ahead and say that some human beings don't have human rights. But when you say there's a right to abortion, when you say that the baby in the womb can be killed, you're saying that some human beings don't have human rights. And therefore that undermines your advocacy of any other human right, because now you're saying, well, people have it only if we say so. The humanity of the child in the womb cannot be denied. There is as much proof for the humanity of the child in the womb as there is for the humanity of you and me. We belong to the human species. That's undeniable from a biological, genetic perspective. Undeniable. Your unique human life and mine, with all our genetically determined characteristics, came at conception. We had it while we were in the womb. So that was you in the womb, that was me in the womb, the same person. Concern about these various issues is rooted in concern for the person. So John Paul said, someone going around crying out about health care or protecting children from gun violence is creating an illusion if they make people think they're really concerned about that person, because they said that same person could have been killed in the womb and it would have been okay with them. Again, the common outcry which is justly made on behalf of human rights is false and illusory if the right to life is not defended. Now, the United States bishops 10 years later made a very similar statement in a document called Living the Gospel of Life. Here's what the U.S. Catholic bishops said. Indeed, the failure to protect and defend life in its most vulnerable stages renders suspect any claims to the rightness of positions in other matters affecting the poorest and least powerful of the human community. So where John Paul II said that those cries for human rights are false and illusory if the candidate is pro-choice on abortion, the U.S. bishops said that their being pro-choice on abortion renders suspect their position on other issues affecting human beings. Again, because they've taken the foundation away. If you can negotiate the right to life, you can negotiate any right. And if you ask them, well, don't you realize that the baby in the womb is human? They won't be able to deny the science, but you know what they'll say? Oh, well, the Supreme Court said that abortion is legal. So in other words, you don't believe in human rights, you believe that they come from the court. Our Declaration of Independence says they come from the Creator. And that it's not government that gives these rights. It's not a Supreme Court that gives these rights. It's not a president or a Congress that gives these rights. It's God. The Declaration says we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, and the first one that it mentions is life. Because without life, you can't have liberty, you can't have the pursuit of happiness, you can't have health care, education, or any other right or good. So don't be fooled. When candidates advocate legal abortion, they do not believe in human rights, and they cannot be credible in their positions on other issues. We have a pope who was a saint, and also the whole body of United States Catholic bishops saying that to us quite clearly, and it's quite consistent with basic human reason. Let's take this into account carefully, my friends, as we evaluate candidates and parties in this upcoming election. In order to see more of our videos about voting, go to electionvideos.org, and our overall election site, prolifevote.com, will have a lot more information for you there as we approach these elections. Father Frank Pavone here of Priests for Life. God bless you.